Good afternoon, and why not say good evening to everyone who will be following us through this amazing broadcast here on Saturdays, talking about one more amazing topic. To be more specific, today we will be presenting a couple other chapters of the book Dawn of a New Era. But welcome everyone, and we welcome those who will also be watching us in the future through our stream on demand. But before we go on and we start this amazing afternoon into this evening with the topic, I would like to read a passage of the book Happy Life, where we can go ahead and kind of calm ourselves a little bit more, get in connected with the message and the moment as well. And I wish you that you are sitting down, really put everything aside, because we're going to talk about really interesting things that I hope that you can apply to yourselves, apply to your environment, and help ourselves in this really change within us so we can live and construct a better environment for us. Joanna de Angelis in the book Happy Life says, in the tumult that takes possession of the world and people, reserve yourself a few moments of silence, which will be transformed into inner quiet. Agitation, noise, and cheap talk unbalance the emotional centers. Listen more than you speak. Think before offering your opinion. Keep away from gossip and keep yourself at peace. This conduct is healthy for all the moments of your life. This way, we would like to invite you for a prayer. Let us thank our dear Creator for this amazing moment that we have in our hands today. We are thankful for the opportunity to do the best we could to prepare ourselves yesterday, as we woke up this morning, to be here today. We ask you, dear Lord, that the information that we are about to share can alleviate our hearts of the burdens that we go through, the difficulties that we face. We ask you, dear Lord, that it gives us encouragement to continue with the help that we have been receiving from our mentors, our guides, and all the great minds that are also incarnated with us, so we can connect with greater things than us, so we can also be greater than we are now in the future. And perhaps the day after tomorrow, even better. We ask you, dear Lord, that you guide our minds and our hearts in this amazing endeavor of presenting to one another our work, our dedication to the to Spiritism and its message. We ask you, dear Lord, that you guide the minds and hearts of all of those who will be watching us in the future in this amazing series of the book, Dawn of a New Era. We are thankful for this moment, and so be it. So, as we were saying earlier, we are giving continuation to this amazing book, Dawn of a New Era. We started a month ago, and we will be give continuation until perhaps we finish, which it should be right before the end of the year. And it's again a nice continuation of the book Planetary Transition. And there are some cases that perhaps we are continue to study that we saw from that book into this book now. But before we go on, let us see what we have seen it thus far with this amazing book. We started last month with the introduction and new responsibilities, where we see the guide and the brother, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, talking about the new endeavors that they are working on. And this is a book that, again, we remind everyone, since we're at the beginning, that we wish that you buy, and you can actually get this from the Out Publisher. As you can see, it was actually the first version was published in 2012, and the English version in 2018. And you can get your own copy and you can read it. If anything, read the Planetary Transition first, and then obviously come to this book and read it, because it's very insightful and it gives us a lot of information of what we're going through right now. It's interesting to point out, and we're going to talk about this as we go through the book, that the Planetary Transition, this book as well, gives an insight of what happens on the other side, right? When we are going through struggles here on planet Earth, what is happening on the other side? There is help. There is a lot of great minds that are watching over us, working for us to learn a lesson with the unfortunate issues that perhaps we're going through right now. We're still going through this pandemic. Thank God things are kind of getting back to normal a little bit more. Many people are vaccinated, but we're still under a very controlled situation in terms of what we can do and what we cannot do. Hopefully soon will be better, but it's important to point out that on the other side there is an amazing amount of work being done for us to come out of it and to be in a better situation. But going back to what we have covered, we cover the introduction and new responsibilities. You can go back and you can watch if you didn't had the opportunity to follow the first two chapters or the introduction, the first chapter. And you can also do the same thing for the planetary transition presentations that we have done, so you have a better understanding of this as well. But most importantly, I always like to remind everyone, please read it. Read it. Send me emails, send us messages, try to find out what you couldn't understand, and we'll try to do our best to help you. And if we don't know, guess what, we'll have to do some research for you as well. But on that note, I would like to give continuation to a highly significant spiritual endeavor, and then we're going to discuss also chapter 3, planning spiritual activities. The Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, as we have seen throughout the planetary transition, in this book, he does the same thing. Every time we start a chapter, he always reminds us, when we start and when we end the chapter, he always starts by showing us how much he appreciates life in general. So he talks about nature. He talks about the lights of the stars. He talks about how he was amazed by the environment, right? How he was feeling, how he connects that with what he was living. So it's important that we point this out, because what are we doing with our environment? Are we only paying attention to the material things? Are we paying attention to the things that really matters to us? So it's important for us to not only think that this is a philosophical, or perhaps that he's trying to show a beautiful language, that to start the chapter or whatnot, but to truly appreciate and say, well, wait a minute, what about that tree in front of my house? What about my backyard? What about the little that I have, the plant, right, that I have right next on my table, on my side table? That is nature. We need to pay attention to these details because it gives us energy, right? It's a living thing. And perhaps even the non-living things as well, that, the environment that we create, it's appreciable too. But most importantly, I think it's important for us to look into the things that are living with us, the animals, right? But he reminds us, as just to make a connection here from the last chapter, from chapter 1, they were appointed to come together for a meeting where they were going to discuss what was going to be done in order for us to help those here on planet Earth because of a specific situation that we were going through that we actually saw on planetary transition. He said, at the appointed time, I headed for the communication centers where the devoted brother, Hildebrando, was waiting with a charm of his kindly personality. He actually presents this really interesting character. After a while, Aurelio, the director responsible for the communication center, entered the room as an incarnate. And on Earth, he was actually a devoted worker in the area of electrical engineering and had left an invaluable heritage for the benefit of society. At that moment, he was accompanied by, the moment that he entered, he was accompanied by a noble and venerable spirit, radiating unparalleled kindness. His face was hallowed by a charming smile, and he displayed a significant magnetism that instantly filled all of us with affability. So they were called into this room. They were actually in this meeting now where Hildebrando brought Manuel Filomeno de Miranda to connect with these other spirits and to find out what was going to be the plan to help our society here on Earth, right? And what was happening to guide the incarnated ones that are here on Earth. Remember, um, um, the book Planetary Transition goes through very neatly on the transition from other spirits from other globes here to Earth to help us succeed, morally speaking, and they will also will be bringing, or they are bringing to us, advancements as well in technology in different areas, if you will. So there is also more work that is now being done to make sure that everything, all the dots are connected, especially morally. So this individual, Aurelio, comes and actually introduce this other spirit that, as Manuel Filomeno de Miranda mentions, his face was haloed by a charming smile and displayed a significant magnetism that instantly filled all of us with affability. So you can see that it's not just someone. This is actually a spirit of a high order that is coming to give them some indication of what is going on and what will be done as well to help. It is my great pleasure to introduce Brother Evandro, who has brought us a timely invitation of certain gravity. This benevolent friend has chosen our community for the implementation of a complex endeavor of assistance to a reputable institution dedicated to Jesus and patronized by the Cantor of God. The institution is facing a dire threat by the darkness. So starts by introducing this individual who is going to give us the teachings, or let's say he's going to give a highlight, a very detailed highlight of what's going on with planet Earth right now. Even though, let me take a step back. Even though the description is actually directly for the individuals in Spiritist centers in Brazil, but I would like to make sure that you, the viewer, that you really pay attention to what he's saying, because this is going to give us not only a good foundation on chapter 3, but also a foundation for the rest of the book and for the rest of our lives. This is life changing, and as we are reading this, because I will have to warn you, I brought a lot of the text because I don't want you to think that Leo is saying this. I don't want you to think that, where are we getting this from? It is from the book. You can go back to the book and actually look at it. I changed some things here and there, but it's actually in the book. Most of it is directly from the book. So as we are reading, please don't think about someone else. Please don't think about what's going on in our country right now. I know it's hard, but think about what you can do as a spirit, evolved spirit as we are, to make a change, to change the environment. Because you and I, we are inserted in this situation. So I think it's important for us to see, okay, yes, this is true. I agree. I've seen it. I've lived. I've done it, right? Because sometimes we have to look at it and say, you know what, perhaps I've been doing this, but how can I change? That's the question that I would like to not impose, but suggest that you bring to your heart and your mind, and kind of help me and help your environment as well, so we can do something better with our lives. So this amazing brother Evandro comes and start to speak as if it was a kind of lecture, a kind of conversation with those who were there. And obviously Manuel Filomeno de Miranda was there along with others. He says the following: the loving friend approached the podium and greeted us with an affable voice in the name of Jesus. You are well aware of the sensitive times in which our incarnate brothers and sisters are living, especially the master's servants in the ranks of contemporary spiritism, right? And as I mentioned earlier, not only I would like to apply this for directly for those in Spiritism in Brazil, but this is for also Spiritism here all over the world. But not only Spiritism, but anyone who is actually trying to live a fulfilling life under the teachings of Christ, right? Under the Christian teachings, even if you're not Christian. I would like to also invite everyone to think that I am trying to do what's best for me and what's best for others to be a better individual. And we can, yes, it's important for us to bring the religious aspect with us, because it does instill in us on a better view of life when we have religiosity. Sometimes, obviously, people take to a different stage, and we're going to see this later on. But it's important for us to kind of put everybody in this globe, right? Because if we just say, and we wave the Spiritist banner only, what is happening to other brothers and sisters who are well guided by other religions under Christianity, other religions that perhaps we don't talk so much, but they're all good brothers and sisters, right? And remember, it's important to remind ourselves that we're all guided by our Master Jesus, the governor of planet Earth, as we learn from Spiritism. So it's important for us to kind of bring everybody together. He says the following: after a long night of persecutions and harsh trials endured by its apostles and pioneers, the movement is now expanding at an amazing pace, offering, especially in Brazil, the materialization of the loving Master's promise concerning the Comforter. It's interesting that they use the word materialization, right? And we're trying to be as spiritual as possible, to become more spiritualized as possible. But he uses the idea of materialization, but the work of Jesus. So it's becoming more concrete, ever more concrete, right? The work of Jesus, the promise of the Master, saying, I will send you the Comforter that will give you some idea what's the next step, right? So he continues by saying, several factors have been in play so that the Kardecian message may find acceptance in various vehicles of dissemination by the mass media and enjoy respect and consideration. These are highly significant times for a good number of scientific authorities in various areas of thought to believe in the existence of God and immortality of the spirit. A few winners of the Nobel Prize, for example, have affirmed that they believe in the intelligence causation of the universe and the reality of life after life. So we've seen this shift. There is a shift now where it's everywhere. This idea that there is a creator, there is a God, there is a continuation of life after life. I want to take the next step and even say, instead of saying life after death, it's just life after life, because it's just a continuation, right? So we're seeing that this is, we're almost a point where this is the norm, that there are several scientists, there are several minds that in the past we would have considered very much so materialistic individuals, because they're really connected with matter, that now looks at it and say, this is interesting. I understand where we are now, but there's more that perhaps what I don't comprehend. Last week we had Juliana here talking about this idea, right, on how we became humble. We humbled ourselves based on what we don't know. We have discovered quite a bit. We have developed some intelligence, but we also have humbled ourselves based on the fact that there's much more to know. And this is a great beginning. And this not only is a push in every area that we can think of, but also there is one thing that happens. With that, it causes a lot of negative sentiments or conditions for spirits that are still in do not want us to develop, or perhaps those whom we have hurt in the past. Whenever we do something better within our lives, guess what? Those that are not in the same place, they tend to do what? They tend to put us down. And we see this over and over and over. And this is something that we are going to talk about it. But it's never too late for us to alarm one another, to encourage one another, to remind one another that perhaps if that is happening, it's not necessarily just the other individual's fault. We are also responsible for this. So I'm going to read a couple paragraphs straight through, and then we're going to stop, because what is about to come is very alarming for all of us. Listen to what Evandro tells us. At the same time, however, the wave of disrespect for life and for ethical and moral principles, in addition to the overwhelming increase in the vulgarity of habits, is all supported by violence. A wave of madness is sweeping the orb, threatening its moral and spiritual structure. Aberrations are on the increase, and the idols of illusion and absurdity attract hypnotized crowds who indulge in the strangest and most frightening behaviors. It is no wonder that the hordes of low order spirits intermingle with these misguided individuals and establish terrible and frightening obsessions that cause considerable sociological, psychological, and moral harm to a numbed society that has lost the concept of accepted spiritual values. This is kind of even said, but it must be said. And I have to share something with you, because when we were putting this together, I was thinking, should we present this? Should we bring this? But it's on the book, and if Manuel Filomeno Miranda, that is way higher morally speaking than me, than any of us, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but really for us to say, okay, if he's this mind is bringing this to us, is for us to truly connect and say, how can we change this? Because here is the one of the antidotes, or one of the perhaps the reason why we're going through what we're going through right now. We are making choices that perhaps allows us to be connected with these minds that are not so helpful. When we open ourselves, making choices as he made it here, without any respect for life, right? Without any ethical or moral principles, right? Devaluing, and as we're going to see later on as well, devaluing family structure, devaluing, the number of things that we know for sure that is important for us because we want to live a mundane life. Guess what? We are prone to be connected with these negative minds, right? But there is more. And it's not unfortunate. I wanted you to take this into a positive consideration, because we have the power to do so. This is an alarming condition, but we have a power to do this. The degradation of culture is alarming, and the worship of every sort of pleasure goes beyond anything that has ever happened in the course of history. Parents indulge in moral license with their children's playmates. Many homes have become like brothels, and disrespect for the family sanctuary has reached high levels of cynicism and degradation that spill over into all sorts of criminality. Crazed authorities indulge in corruption, while regular citizens wallow in poverty, without any hope or joy of living. Consequently, they try to escape through the traps of depression, suicide, and illegal drugs. I do not mean to sound over pessimistic, but the moral situation of incarnate wayfarers is downright tragic. Of course, there are exceptions, such as those who have used technology to reach for the stars, although their feet are still mired in the basest passions. So, once more, even the actual author, the person, the spirit who Evandro was actually speaking to us and saying, look, I don't want to be pessimistic, but this is the condition. He mentions to us that our higher minds, and we're going to see this again, there are higher minds saying to us, look, there is a better way to live, right? He comes back again, he mentions to us that there are those who are actually using the tools that we have nowadays, technology, to bring comfort to all of us, to live a better life. We have we have achieved amazing conquests, and we're still living a very foolish life when it comes down to deal with our responsibilities, to deal with one another, right? And again, it's very tragic, but the time needs to turn, because it's getting late in terms of of how we live our lives in this nonsense. and we have to do something so that tomorrow we wake up and we feel better. Here is a great paradox, he says. While more and more of the worldly are becoming fascinated by the illuminative Spiritism doctrine, many workers of that restored gospel are slipping into unfortunate behaviors, demonstrating their own moral fragility and the fact that they have not observed the Lord's sublime teachings after all. So these are us, individuals that perhaps come in contact with the message, and unfortunately, we don't give continuation. Not that we for example, when we study Spiritism, that we have to give talks, that we have to do this or that in the Spiritist arena, but to become a better spirit, to become a person in society that perhaps gives better, that transposes better values, or at least questions the current values and say, you know what, I can do better than what I did yesterday, right? So this is the idea, where we really have to be careful, especially when we have been presented to this amazing message, to say no when we have to say no, to say yes when we have to say yes, right? So this is again another calling for us that are now inserted with this message, that now we have in contact with this rescued gospel that we mention so much, that we talk so much here in our meetings, and the different messages that we come across, or work that we come across within Spiritism. Defections are continuous, and personal downfalls are alarming to newcomers who approach with innumerable expectations, anticipating support and guidance, especially through the power of personal example, right? So when someone goes to the Spiritist Center, that speaker, that person that is speaking, they're going to be looked as, okay, Leo now has to be the example. And this is not easy, right? This is definitely not easy. So I remember, I'm just making a parenthesis here, one of the things that the great friend, and I consider him like a father for us, Jorge Godinho, who is today the president of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation. In one of our conversations, one of the things that he said is that we really have to be careful that perhaps when we look, for example, of someone who has been working at the Spiritist Center, who perhaps hold a specific position within the Spiritist Center, right? And I think we can apply this as well in society. We can apply this as well to the political arena, anywhere in the world, right? That we look at that individual as the perfect individual, right? We place that individual in a pedestal thinking, okay, that individual is perfect. Just because that person is speaking, that person is saying a prayer, or that person is giving passes, guess what? That's one of the worst fallacies ever that we can do for ourselves and for other individuals as well. Because at the minute that individual does something wrong, well, they're incarnated here. We're all incarnated here on earth. We're not perfect. What happens? Our world crumbles, right? Because we are expecting that individual to do everything perfectly. So that is something that we really have to be careful. And this is one of the things that in part, the individuals that are in the Spiritist Center, the individuals that are in society in general, they tend to present themselves of something that they're not. So that's why we need to humble ourselves and say, yes, I am temporarily holding the opportunity to present something to you, but I'm not perfect. I am temporarily holding the position to be a president. I am temporarily holding the position in a company to be the manager or the director, but I'm not perfect. I need you to help me succeed, and we all need to work together. So it's important that we do that, as well as when we do such a thing, we're telling the individuals that, okay, don't kind of bring your expectations a little bit down, because as you are not perfect, I'm not perfect, right? So I think this is important for us to live in a better society as well. And then he continues, discarnate who exploit extreme fear in this sickly interaction use the mental space of these imprudent individuals to keep the sublime promises of Jesus from becoming fulfilled. So when we are in this connection with one another, and we don't agree, and we're going to say a little bit more of this, where we have our difficulties with one another, what happens? we get upset. And as we have our disconnections, to say the least, with one another, and we get upset, other minds, the discarnated minds who wants to instill more fire into the pit, guess what? They're going to come towards us. They're going to come towards the other individual and create more um, difficulties between us incarnated ones here on earth. So we really have to be careful how we're thinking, how we're processing our feelings towards ourselves and towards others as well. But there is more. And we're coming to an end on this, but please keep that idea of renewal with all of this that we're speaking over here. Many who adhere to this the doctrine postulates, but they are in no emotional shape to assume the responsibility conferred on them by circumstances and by people lacking common sense, this giving rise to behavior problems and difficulties that could otherwise be avoided. Also concerning adherence, confrontations and challenges mixed with personal problems do arise, and soon their joy fades and they make negative remarks about others, leading to conflict if their suggestions or standards are not appreciated, as we said earlier. Or still, they begin to have ideas that they believe are extremely important, and they become tempted to correct, modify. I'm going to say this again. They become tempted to correct, modify, or adapt to modern times the thought set forth in the Spiritist codification itself, creating lines of thought that indulge in the frivolous or the social, or the pretentious claim that their idea is a step forward, a supplement to the codification. And Evandro, which we're not going to bring here, also mentions that this have happened to Christianity, right? When the empires, the different minds took the message and said, "Oh no, let's make this change. Let's apply this only for a certain group of people, but we can live a lavish life. Let's make some changes here because now this is not connected." Where the message was transformed, was changed to actually only represent or to benefit a few. So it's important for us to look at these aspects. And if it is happening in Brazil, quite frankly, it could happen to us here as well, where we're going to start seeing individuals or consideration to change what we have here, especially in the basis of Spiritism, all the teachings that were brought by Allan Kardec as well, that we think that, oh, perhaps this is kind of outdated. Well, everything, and we can talk to, we have talked to many scientists, different individuals from different fields, and when they read the Spirit's book and they read other teachings as well brought by the Spirits, they said, oh, you know what, this is hand in hand with what we're studying right now. So it's important for us to really be careful with these changing ideas that we have within ourselves. As anything on earth, there is an end for ignorance, and help is on the way. Help is actually already happening here, but in terms of what's happening right now in this idea, we really like that we are actually analyzing here, especially these changes, these ideals to change the codification, if you will. The great minds are helping us, right? Because we don't want to fall in the same pits. The Saint of Assisi's former disciples from past days in Umbria have implored his help. They have reincarnated for the purpose of building a modern, earthly institution dedicated to charity without neglecting the simplicity of his loving heart. Deeply touched, he became a benefactor of the project and beseeched Jesus to bless it with success. So, again, we have Saint Francis of Assisi, helping us, guiding us through other minds, right, to change the scenario, right, where we're once more bring the true teaching, the true living gospel, when it's just based on help, the purpose to dedicate it or the dedicated purpose of charity only to really help change the environment within planet Earth. Many workers from both realms of life are helping multitudes, helping recover the obsessed, bringing the therapy of work to the depressed, and educating the ignorant. Once more, I'm going to say this because look how the work is done, helping recover the obsessed, bringing the therapy of work to the depressed, and educating the ignorant. It's not that we are going to look at the political arena and say, oh, this is the savior. We're going to go to a specific set of thought and say, this is the savior. Or we're going to say that we're go to a hospital and say, now that we're in a pandemic, and say, this is the best individual, he's going to save us. No, the savior, number one, it comes from within us. When we individually and collectively we start doing the right things. And what is the right things, Leo? You may want to ask. Well, we all have the good things inside of us that we can do. If we are being charitable, if we're being kind to one another, if we think without any form of selfishness within us or pride, guess what? We're acting right. We're doing the right things, right? And we will see this alert on chapter 3, by the way. And this is how the change is happening. And the thing is, yes, help is on the way. We're being helped. But what happens again? Every time there is a measure for the help, there is a countermeasure from the other side to say, okay, now Leo is changing. Now this group of individuals are helping. We've seen some improvement. Guess what? This is only temporarily because we're still connected with them, right? Somehow we're still connecting with them. And we saw a couple of slides before the reasons why. The big threat. What is the big threat that we're going to address? They are going to address in this book, as we have said. They are connected because we are connected with these negative minds. Because its members are united in faith and work, these enemies have been following them, waiting for any weaknesses that may arise so that they can enter the fortress and undermine it from within. So imagine a group of workers, right? Or imagine a group of, let's say, doctors, nurses that are working really hard to maintain the environment well, right? The physical and the spiritual, and you can name it, whatever it comes to mind right now. What is the negative minds that are perhaps do not want the planet Earth and us to evolve doing? They're looking for any openness that they can to get in and to start breaking from within. That is why it's really important for us within our family members, within the Spiritist centers, the gatherings that we have, the social groups that we perhaps are part of it, that whenever there is a discussion or a difficult moment, that we minimize it. How do we minimize it? That we accept the other person how they are. Yes, there are adjustments that we have to make and there are boundaries for everything. I get it. But understand that we're all growing together, because the minute that we divide ourselves, that's when these other minds, they come in and they start to break our connection within, right? They infiltrate and they start separating. And when there is separation, guess what? We're divided. We will definitely fall. So it's important that we look at these aspects and analyze how we can help. And there are many other ways that we can work on this, but we live at that and we go on, obviously because of time and because of we have to cover different things too. And that is what has been slowly happening. The presumption and rudeness of one of its ambitious, childish, foolish, and aggressive members have begun to take effect, generating unrest and becoming a moral breach for invasion by a lord of darkness, a wretched spirit who has been an enemy of Jesus since the end of the 15th century. This is again what was covered on chapter 19 and chapter 20, and we'll put the description when you watch this video that you can click on from the presentations that we did of the book Planetary Transitions, when we see this rabbi that were, let's put it this way, not well treated or mistreated by us, the early Christians in the past, and he's still trying to get his revenge. So again, go back to chapter 19 and 20 of the book Planetary Transition so you can get to know a little bit more of what happened then. But now they're trying to go back and fix this situation so that the infiltration stops and ceases to happen, right? He personally took what happened. So he personally took command of these imprudent members, the individuals that are now well connected, or they let themselves astray from the hard work. And we realize the gravity of the situation. Good workers have become aware of the danger and are seeking inspiration for immediate measures before irreversible damage is caused. They appealed through prayer to the Poverello of God, again, St. Francis of Assisi, who has assumed the overall command of the institution. He has called us to the delicate task of removing the obstacle by assisting this deranged spirit, since the Father does not want the death of the sinner, but rather that of the sin. So, what's the big plan? What are they going to do to remove this individual, not to mistreat him, but to remove this condition from that is happening, that was happening at a specific spirit center or group of spiritist center, or mining the negativity throughout different spiritist center, different groups of people. A plan has been drawn up that includes all of us. You will go to various spiritist centers to assist the selfless servants of the Nazarene Messiah, whereas I and another small group will first attend to the nearly foundering ship and then proceed to other tasks. So they're going to divide themselves into certain different groups to go to different spiritist centers, because this is not only happening in one location. This was actually happening in several locations where they need to make sure that this overall change happens, not only in one location again, but to cover several and help several individuals, as we're going to see on chapter 3 as well, and then moving on to other chapters. So that is actually what we are seeing. This is basically what's happening right now on planet Earth. And I wanted to remind you again, please reread this chapter. Go through those difficult paragraphs that we read here, but do it with the intention of a change, right? It's alarming. It's difficult. Yes, it is. As the author of Under mentions, he says, I don't want to be pessimistic, but this is what's happening. This is reality, right? Let us go back to our true values on how we treat ourselves, on how we treat one another, on how we really value what's important and what's going to be forever, and not only through this lifetime, right? Or value, when I say actually forever, and value that we can take to the next generation or to the next reincarnation as well. So it's important that we look at these aspects. Moving on to chapter 3, it's really interesting because a team was actually formed, right? And Manuel Filomeno de Miranda actually, checking my time here, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda comes to us and he presents to us the team that was actually formed. And it will be very exciting to hear from these different minds that we are going to share here. Some of them you already know. Some of them are spirits that are well known in Brazil, for certain areas of Brazil. And but the legacy that they created on planet Earth while they're reincarnated on planet Earth, the last times that were reincarnated here, it's an amazing journey. And there are a lot of information that we can actually go back and search in English as well, that has been translated about these minds, especially the last one. But I don't want to spoil. Let me go and show to you what is the team that Manuel Filomeno Miranda was assigned to work with. The first individual that he presents to us is this amazing mind here, Giuseppe Titinga. I know the names were quite Brazilian or Portuguese, if you will, but bear with me. He was actually born in the state of Bahia, from the state of Bahia in Brazil. He was born on December 2nd, 1866, and discarnated on March 25th, 1939. He was actually the one who founded and led, until his discarnation, the state of Bahia Spiritist Federation, which it went through so many transformations, so many difficult moments to become what it is today, even still the state of Bahia Spiritist Federation. So it's an amazing journey that he had to work and do. And mind you, these individuals had their personal lives as well, right? To conduct. They went through struggles just like you and I did, but as they went through the certain of their struggles, they saw that there was something more to their lives. All right, some of them did not incarnate spiritists. Number one, Brazil, especially for many years, was predominantly a Catholic country, and I can't tell you the statistics of today, but I'm quite sure it still is very Catholic. There is a growth as well in the Protestant arena, but for sure there is quite a bit of minds that are or Christianity being followed directly through the different areas. Then the second one is Eurípides Barçanufo. He was born in Sacramento, the state of Minas Gerais, in Brazil. He was born on May 1st, 1880, and discarnated on November 1st, 1918. He founded in 1907 the Allan Kardec School, right? And he was a great medium who helped a number of needed brothers and sisters physically and spiritually. And I say this because Eurípides Barçanufo, as we study through the Spiritism, he was one of the well completed type of medium. When I say this, is because he had many ways to help other people through mediumship, different types of mediumship. Right, he could actually be here right now with us, and he would just stop and go somewhere else and help someone at another town and come back. And there's, again, I don't want to go in detail with it, but this is how complete this mind was to help other individuals. But hopefully in the future we'll have a talk that we can give, and unfortunately I didn't have the time to search if there is anything in English that we can actually utilize as a point of reference. But he was very a well complete medium, to say the least. Another mind is Jesus Gonzalez. He was born in Boreri, in the state of São Paulo, also in Brazil, July 12th, 1902, and discarnated February 16th, 1947. Found the St. Augustine Spiritist Center in Pirapitinga, in the state of São Paulo. Also, this gentleman, he discarnated from with cancer disease as well, and it was towards the end of his life that he became a spiritist. And it was really interesting that he also went through quite a journey. And I will try to do my best to perhaps give more information about these minds and put it together so we can actually connect or put it with the video in future times, where we can go back and kind of find some references as well. And then finally, Dr. Bezerra de Menezes, whom we have talked about at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. I remember about 3 or 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, or a little bit earlier, we gave a 30-minute, 40-minute talk about it, and it's just available for us if you want to research. But I'm quite sure there are other speakers who have actually done an amazing work, much better than I did, that we can actually look into it. And it's very well known individual spirit in Brazil. He was actually born in Jaguaretama in the state of Ceará, which is actually in the northeast part of Brazil, a little northern than the state of Bahia, on August 29th, 1831, and discarnated on April 11th, 1900. He was actually one of the presidents of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation from 1889 to 1900. And he was a politician. He was a doctor. He helped many individuals as well while he was living on Earth here with us. In all senses, I mean, he was a great mind. And I would like to point out that a lot of the helps that Eurípides Passanufo did mediumistically to other people to help and guide other people mediumistically, it was actually through the help of the spirit Bezerra de Menezes. So Eurípides Passanufo was receiving Bezerra de Menezes to help other individuals. So it's really interesting how there is a pre-connection, and Manuel P. Miranda mentions that he has worked with these other minds before. But let us see what Bezerra de Menezes, who is the one guiding this group, he's going to be the one responsible for this group, has to tell us, right? Not only the group, but also has to tell us. And Manuel P. Miranda brings these teachings to us. Going back here. So what he starts to do is to show scenes. Bezerra de Menezes starts showing scenes of the Spiritist Center where they're going to be working for 30 days, right? And it's very interesting because it may be things that, okay, as we were reading, as we're presenting to you, say, these things happen in a Spiritist Center? Yes, it is happening. So there are two cases that we're going to cover. One, well, both of them are positive because there is a positive outcome for it. But this is what's happening in the Spiritist Center. So if it's happened in the Spiritist Center, I beg and I ask you right now, what is to say that it's not happening in society, right? When we are not in an environment where we try to put ourselves at a higher position. When I say higher position, that we tend to kind of not think negative things, not criticize, or so let us pay attention. Please, again, use that critical mind and heart where you're not really criticizing the individual, but to really apply to yourself and say, have I done this? And if you haven't, great. If you have, please change. Or if there is something that we can help others, let us do so, because we will see that we have to have compassion to ourselves and we have to have compassion for others as well. So Manuel Bezerra de Menezes says the following: these scenes are being sent directly from the Spiritist institution that is one of the objects of our upcoming visit to the beloved planet. So imagine that they're there now. They come out of that meeting that we presented on chapter 2, and now they're in this small group, small location where Bezerra de Menezes is going to show these scenes, right? As if it was a recording that happened in that location, and now they're projecting again to see how can they help the community at large. It's not just those responsible for the Spiritist Center, but everyone who's going to that location. It was an evening telling a doctrinal study of the Spirit codification, and at that moment, the speaker was just finishing up. We could see that he was inspired by the center's mentor spirit as his listeners received appropriately bioenergy aid. So this is right at the moment of the passes, right? When we say bioenergy, is the passes where we stop and we pray and we start applying the passes. For those who have been in the Spiritist Center, you remember where everything is calmed down. Perhaps we dim the lights a little tiny bit so we can kind of connect with the higher minds a little bit better, and we start applying the passes. This transfusion of energy starts to happen. The attendees' fervor produced a high potency vibration that was answered by a veritable shower of light particles that fell and penetrated them, while a number of spirits benefactors assisted some of their loved ones by enveloping them in successive waves of soothing harmony. So let me stop here and remind everyone that many, many times when we are the Spiritist centers, perhaps now that we're doing this virtually, when we sit down to help one another through, um, for example, the assistance that we provide on Mondays when we read a passage of a book, and then we make some comments, and then we pray together so that we can receive our passes. And we invite everyone to think, okay, you can also help by praying, by following the words. Also, when we do our God at home or gospel at home, whatever we want to call, and we are praying together, this happens. It's not just the speaker, it's not just the person who is praying, it's not just the person who is giving the passes. If we all connected, we make this vibration more potent, like as Bezerra de Menezes mentions here, high potency vibration. So it's important that we always, when we're reminded or when we're together, that we do our part as well. Because guess what? The more we work together, the better and more efficient the work will be as well. So just parenthesis that I want to make it here, because this is for all of us, not just for the speaker, the talker, the person giving the talk and whatnot. So he continues by just giving the account of what's happening in the Spiritist Center, right? There was a terrible, depressed young woman who had been immersed in anguish while vampirized by a wicked, merciless, discarnate enemy. So she was brought. I'll read this, and then she was taken to that Spiritist Center by a family member to help her because of her unfortunate suicidal thoughts. There, she found out that what would happen to her if she were to commit suicide. So at the Spirit Center, she was guided to think otherwise, because if you do this, guess what? It's not going to be so positive on the other side if you commit suicide. She was still feeling anguish. She was like Bezerra de Menezes mentions, that she was immersed in anguish, and she was being obsessed. So she's in this position, and a lot starts happening when they're providing the passes. She started to recall the loss of her mother, and then obviously the abuses of her stepmother, which combined with the discarnate persecutor caused psychological torments. So, and she was anguished about the loss of her mother, that she actually lost. I believe the Bezerra mentions that she was only 4, and the difficulties that she went through with her stepmother. She started to connect even more with the obsessor. As she continued to focus on her mother, her condition improved. Her mother then approaches her, and kisses her tenderly, uplifting her with encouragement. So she had the chance to continue to connect with the stepmother, but she's like, well, my mother, I miss her so much. And guess who shows up? Her mother. As she and the obsessive spirit received the passes, the spirit could not continue with the suicidal thought that it imposed on her. So there was a disconnection, right? They were disconnected then, because as she changed her vibration, guess what? The spirit could not continue, the obsessor spirit could not continue with the difficult thoughts that he or she was imposing on her. And I'm now giving a gender to the actual spirit, but it's just how we present ourselves and how we use language, but it was imposing on her. So, and towards the end, the transformation, the outcome is just beautiful, because she says the following: I don't know what just happened. I can only say that I have been inundated with a sense of well-being that has been absent over the past few months. So she was suffering for quite some time. I had the feeling that my mother was here and that she was encouraging me. A strange thing happened, like I had just been disconnected from something that was constricting my chest and filling my head with constant thoughts of suicide. I was able to pray, something that I haven't been able to do for a long time. And in countless times, we have come in contact with individuals telling us the same thing when we are at the Spiritist Center, when we pray together, when we come together, right? That they, something changed. I don't know what happened, but when I heard someone talk, it was really uplifting. Or that phrase changed my thought, changed my mind. It's beautiful when this happens, right? And to see someone who has been suffering for a couple months now, going through this change, is just so uplifting, so helpful to all of us, because the it gives us courage to continue the work that we are doing, right? As well as that individual, because hopefully in the future they can see that if this happened to me, hopefully, obviously, this can happen to anyone who may be going through suicidal thoughts, difficult, ideas that perhaps are not positive ideas. Her cousin, perhaps the one who brought her to the Spiritist Center, said to her, "Jesus have attended our prayers. Even so, this is not a cure, but the first victory in the recovery process. The medications will help you rebalance your neurocommunications. You will win the battle using your own efforts and the blessings of heaven. Don't abandon the beneficial resource now at your fingerprints. Stay vigilant, because that spirit will try to return with even more power and defiance." So the idea is the following: that is the first contact, or the first way that we have to recover from those first battles, right? But the rest of the work has to be done by us, those individuals who are going through the tough time, as well as the help of others, right? But we have to stay vigilant. The core message here is for all of us to stay vigilant. And there is something interesting that occurred to me this week, that we were reading on our gospel at home, a message from chapter 11 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, item 11 as well. The chapter is entitled "Love One's Neighbor as Oneself." And it's entitled, the actual item is entitled "Selfishness," by the Spirit Emmanuel in Paris, 1861. He says the following: "I will do all." I'm sorry. The cousin tells her, "I will do all I can for you, but the hardest and most persistent part concerns you and your duties towards life." So she goes back and tells her cousin, "Look, you have to do your best now. You have a duty towards life to be a good citizen, right? To be a good spirit, right? And I will help you, but it's on your hands right now." And it puts responsibility back on the suffering cousin, who just received this amazing a hug of new energy, and she needs to continue to work, to be vigilant. And the passage that I wanted to bring to you to connect with the gospel according to Spiritism says the following, when Emmanuel says the following: "Selfishness is the target at which all true believers must aim their weapons, their strength, and their courage." And he says, "I say the courage because more courage is needed to overcome oneself than to overcome other people." She has to overcome herself. She has to get out of her condition, and now to say there's more to life than think negative things or to connect with negative thoughts, right? Yes, she did have, acknowledge that she had a difficult past with her stepmother, but that cannot stop her from continuing to be a good individual, because now she has the living proof. Even though her mother came back in spirit to help her, she has a living proof through her feelings that her mother continues to be. Her mother continues her mother, right? So it's a beautiful end here, and we always have these helps from the Gospel according to Spiritism, the help from the Spirit's book, and many others as well that we can bring to enlighten our lives. The second case, it was actually a conversation between two women in the Spiritist Center. This is actually a conversation as they walk out of the Spiritist Center. And we always say as well that perhaps our meetings, it's always good to maintain the order that we instill upon ourselves in terms of, okay, just because we finish the meeting, it's not that we can do whatever we want. Remember, the message that Joanna de Angelis brought to us is that speak less. And when we speak of good things, right, with good intention, so that we don't connect with negative minds. Listen to what happened. There's no doubt, actually, that one of the individuals says, there's no doubt about the beauty of our brother's message. This is talking about the speaker. But it was too long and a bit tiresome. And I must confess that I couldn't follow his line of thinking because I was watching the behavior of that wretched woman who had the gall to come to the meeting looking so disfigured. Don't you think she might have some issues? She looks so bedraggled lately and has been so quiet. So she is now confessing that instead of paying attention to the actual meeting, to the actual teachings that was being provided at the Spirit Center, she was actually paying attention to someone else who unfortunately was not looking so well, right? God knows why, and we're going to find out. But guess what? It happens. And this is when we need to stop ourselves and say, have I done this? Or not only at the Spiritist Center, anywhere in our lives, right? And obviously, Bezerra de Menezes mentions that the comments attracted a node discarnate that she had, who was actually also exploiting her physically, who had been actually stopped from entering the Spiritist Center, so not to cause more commotion and maintain a disconnection from her, right? But because of her comments, what happened? She connects again with that spirit. And then the other friend looks at her and say, I disagree. I can't fathom how a 45-minute lecture so rich with optimism and such wonderful guidelines for happiness could seem tiresome. In fact, I'm sorry it wasn't even longer, because I compare what he said with my own conduct and discovered certain emotional flaws, what I will try to correct from now on, that I will try to connect from now on. So the other friend, much more alerted, much more self-centered, tells her, look, what you're saying is nonsense. You know, he said so many good things that we could apply to ourselves, and I will put into practice, that I don't think, that you're making much sense. And then she continues, the good friend says, as for that woman, I heard that her husband discarnated in a tragic accident not even a month ago, and that she has behaved with the dignity of a real spiritist. Even though she's all torn up inside, she's bravely getting on with her life. Of course, she's sad, but I don't think she is a bedraggled, as you described her. It is just a matter of perspective. I see her as being deeply engrossed in what really matters in life, its surprises, and how to handle them, overcoming the superficial worries that so often get all our attention. So, once more, a well-connected mind in a nice way tells a friend that, look, I think you're, I don't know, the way you're looking things, the way you're analyzing things, your perspective is a little bit off. And it's okay to be off. I mean, we need these types of reminders that when we are off by our friends to say, Leo, you're a little bit off there, right? And the importance here is that we don't get upset just because this or that person tells me that I'm not so well right now. And we need to give some consideration to this, because bottom line is that they were in a Spiritist Center. So at the Spiritist Center or anywhere in our lives is not the place for us to analyze a person if we're not in the intent to help and let's say judge that individual, right? If we're looking to say, well, you know what, Leo perhaps is not dressing well, is something happening, maybe I can help him somehow, or this individual looks like he's kind of losing a lot of weight, is something that I can help, And again, you keep it to yourself and you approach the person in a nice way if you are given the ability, because we also don't want to say that, oh, we're just going to be immune to what's happening around us. No, it's quite the opposite. It's for us to be subtle enough that we are connecting with everyone with respect, right? And then Bezerra Menezes also, Dr. Bezerra Menezes says the following: other remarks, it enables us to see how the message of the good resonates with listeners according to their interest and moral evolvement. So it depends how we are, right? It depends our how we are vibrating, and this is what we're going to get from the environments that we are inserted in. Um, one case, we see a cousin who was in real deep difficult in a difficult situation, and that she got the positive out of the message. And perhaps we see these two friends as well over here, that one did an awesome job, but the other one was given the ability as well, but because her mind was into something else, she didn't get the best out of it. That's why we remind everyone again, you know, we have come thus far. You're now sitting now and watching the talk, watching the praying together, or doing the God at home. Get the best out of it. Do your best out of it, right? It's the the example that I would give is that if you pay for a ticket, right, at a theater that I know not many of us are going to the theater anymore, what do you want to do? You don't want to sleep. You want to watch. You want to watch the movie. You want to enjoy what, where you are. And it's the same thing here, especially when it's free, when it's all being offered to you for free, for you to watch something, for you to change our lives. Guess what? Get the best out of it. If you're going to receive the passes, go receive the passes. Not think about work. Not think about the difficulties that we see within our lives. So that's the two. These are the two examples that I want to bring. And some alarming messages from Bezerra de Menezes for us to finalize here, but it's important to bring it to us. During this grave period of planetary transition to a world of regeneration, suffering is increasing in intensity in human circles, and spirits obstinate in evil realize they cannot continue their wicked exploits. Consequently, incensed and furious, they more ferociously attack those who become entangled in their snares, as if expecting to thwart the divine plans. The entire planet is enveloped in increasing difficulties, the natural result of thousands of years of human thoughtlessness and selfishness, right? As we were saying earlier today. And then famine is disseminating multitudes. Domestic revolutions are shaking those victimized by ruthless dictatorship. Fanatical religions are terrorizing. International finance is suffering the impact of administrative incompetence. Diseases of varied etiology are disseminating bodies, minds, and hearts. And again, guys, this is actually it happened way before COVID, and we're still here. So we need to open up for the positive. Paternalistic and electioneering measures are being taken, but the causes of poverty are not being removed by educating the younger generations. Instead, they are being increasingly neglected in the forming of their character and regard for human rights through fair and duly enforced laws. Of course, it is not for us to criticize, and this is the point that I would like to finalize with. Of course, it is not for the point for us to criticize these regrettable administrators, but to feel pity to them, since they will have to return to the terrestrial stage to collect the heaps of offenses they left behind, waiting for them, clothed in suffering and deserving of compassion. Perhaps they will expiate their wrongs on a world inferior to the earth they dishonored and assailed with their indifference and cruelty. So, guess what? All of us, if we will have to be responsible or held responsible for what we're doing now. And if there are measures that are not being taken, or there are certain things that are negatively done at this point, we will have to reap the consequences, especially those who commit those acts. So it's not for us to judge. And this idea of compassion is well brought to us in the gospel according to Spiritism as well, through the Spirit Michel, where he says that compassion is the virtue that brings you closer to the angels. It is the sisters of charity. It is the sister of charity which leads you to God. Compassion, deeply felt, is love. Love is the devotion. Love is devotion. Devotion is for forgetting oneself. And this forgetfulness, this self-denial on behalf of unfortunates, is virtue par excellence, the kind that divine Messiah practiced throughout his life and taught in his holy and sublime doctrine. Why am I reading this before I read what Bezerra Menezes brings to us? Because I want to show to you that you perhaps don't have to go to this book to read about compassion, or extract these teachings, right? It's in the Gospel according to Spiritism that if you would like, you can be implemented in your God at home. And the message, we can read what Bezerra Menezes says when he says, in our work of this obsession, let us have compassion on the suffering, but let us not forget the ones that are unhappiest, the unhappiest, those that are still dominated by prolonged hatred without a moment of peace, having become downright criminals. As spiritual therapists, for our discarnate brothers and sisters, compassion regarding their misfortune has to be a rule that keeps us from tuning in to their anger and cruelty. Even though Jesus, look at the example, even though Jesus was forceful when dealing with hateful spirits, he always had compassion on them. To finalize the compassion part from the Gospel according to Spiritism, this is not the whole message. The message, the item 8, entitled Compassion from chapter 13, is much longer than this. But so please go and read it. It says, the most appropriate sentiment for enabling you to progress by subduing your selfishness and pride, the one that predisposes your soul to humility, beneficence, and love for your neighbor, is compassion. Compassion is the melancholic but celestial precursor of charity, the first of all virtues. Compassion is the sister of charity whose benefits she prepares and enables all of us. So there we have, dear friends. This is actually what we can cover for chapter, a little bit longer than we want, but what we can cover for chapter 2 and chapter 3. More to come next month. I would like to take the time to take some questions, some comments as well that we have. Perhaps we may not be able to cover all of it, but we'll certainly try some of them. And as we always do, we acknowledge some of the hellos and all the time that we have done here, spent here, and watched this amazing talk and the continuation of this book. So I'll ask Daniel to help me here with some of the comments and questions here. He's going to be posing, and hopefully I will be trying to answer them. Iasko says, this book was dictated in 2012, so dealing with present situation. Numb society allied to obsession by low order spirit result in raising numbers of suicide, mental disorders, drug addiction. This added by the weak sleeping actions of spiritists happening in Brazil, but probably here in other countries. It seems a very worrisome picture. Sure it is, yeah. How to turn around this difficult situation as workers in the spiritist movement, make more truthful assessment to identify problems leaving. Yasko, it's difficult, right? I think the when I say difficult, it's because everybody have their own issues, their perspectives. Everyone is different. That's when I say that it's difficult. But because I think the antidote is very easy, as Manuel Filomeno de Miranda And in chapter 3 as well, Dr. Bezerra de Menezes tries to reminds us, right? The foundation is there. The Christ's teachings is has been with us for 2,000 years, and perhaps we haven't grasped it yet, right? And here we are, we come back, and we tend to impose ourselves. We forget to be as humble as we can, and dominate the areas that we are within, right? So being humble, one of the things that we have mentioned here is very important. Be compassionate. And this is again, applying this to Leo is very difficult too. So I'm with you. We're all together on this. That's why we need these reminders, right? And when you need a checkup, talk to somebody who you can trust. That not only is going to tell you what you like to hear, but also the things that you don't want to hear it. The reminders that it's going to say, Leo, you need to change, and be humble about it. Let's not get upset because someone is saying this may not be the right way. So I think that we need to humble ourselves more. That's number one, because anytime that we don't recognize the issue, the problem, we're going to continue to do so. We're going to continue to live the same life. So we need to recognize the problem, and I think the main thing is to humble ourselves, to change the situation, acknowledge the situation, and make some changes if possible. So that would be but you're right. There is quite a bit that we need to change there. And then Paula says the struggles goes back to the very beginnings of thought. We united with God to I, separation, judgment, conflict, and etc. Yes, it is exactly it. We need to be careful because the idea of selfishness is that I want all for myself, and the idea of pride is connected with the idea that I'm more than others, right? And I'm more than God. I can do what God, quote unquote, I believe is not doing, right? Because we want it now, we want revenge now, we want changes now, but we have to be humble enough again to acknowledge that everybody changes in their own pace, right? So Daniel says, I was wondering if one can also receive this type of high potency vibration on places that are not a spiritist center. What do you think? For sure. Anytime that there is a higher purpose than ourselves, it can happen. So let's take, for example, in a group of scientists when they're studying a specific matter, especially when it's going to bring an advancement in society. I am quite sure that there are high spirits guiding them, and they feel this energy. They may not describe as this warmth, right, feeling. They're not going to describe perhaps as a very touching feeling, right? But they will describe as a rush, or perhaps that their minds were processing things very fast because the infusion of highly well-connected spirit towards them. So yes, any field of life, any a condition of life, when there is one or more connect in the name of Jesus, and when I say in the name of Jesus, not just praying, but doing goodness, guess what? There he will be. So I would like to continue here, and then Paula says, how are Brazilians taught about a discarnate adversary when they come from a Catholic upbringing? Paula, that's a good question. I can't answer directly, but it depends on the situation. I would believe in yes. I mean, if the person is not a spiritist or doesn't come from a spiritist upbringing, we're going to try to be as, and I say we, it's because I would like to apply this if were to happen here to us in the U.S. We're going to try to apply it, the perspective, the best way possible, so that the person can understand, and we're not inflicting them any type of feeling adverse to what they already believe. Not that we're going to try to paint a picture that it doesn't exist or something that is false, but to be humble enough to kind of guide that individual. Look, life goes on, right? So, what you think that perhaps that individual sees to live or to exist, they continue to go on. And if the person is a little bit more open, perhaps we insert a little bit more. Say you can even connect with that individual through prayer, through your dreams, perhaps. And then if the person truly is open for, there are actually a spiritist meeting that can receive a connection or a message from that individual. Not that we're going to be proposing that the spirit's going to come and deliver a message, but you get the point. As far as explaining to someone, it will depend on the level of understanding that that individual has towards this spiritual life. I hope that helps. Dr. Bezerra de Menezes appears to be saying that his current world state is an expected and necessary experience prior to a transition to planetary regeneration. Let me read this again. I'm sorry. Dr. Bezerra appears to be saying that this current world state is an expected and necessary experience prior to a transition to planetary regeneration. I don't think it's expected. I don't think he's trying to say that it's expected. Let me, and it's going to sound contradicting, but I don't think he's saying it is expected in the sense that pain is being inflicted on planet Earth in general. Okay, it is expected in terms of our behavior, if you will. I hope you understand this. So it is expected because we're not morally well evolved. So guess what? The consequences, what we expected from these consequences, yes, is suffering, right? But I don't want anybody to think that the expectation of living a going through a tough time is because God is imposing this. It's naturally because we're not well balanced, right? So then, yes, there is an expected transition that we're going to see a little bit more difficulties happening because the way we apply ourselves. Needless to say, this cannot go on, as he mentioned, right? And that's why we'll see this infusion of help, these different treatments that we are receiving in all sorts of arenas of our lives, right? And the time also has come that God has given the spirits from the past to reincarnate one more time and say, here's another chance. We need to make some progress here. We need to look at what really is important for us and stop the madness before we have to reincarnate into a planet in a planet that is less evolved planet Earth right now for us to give continuation in our reincarnatory plan. Okay? I hope that helps. Yasko says, Chapter 3, wonderful technique to cut off the low-level comments of the wretched friend. Yes, we sometimes don't use Jesus' advice of yes to be yes, no to be no. Plus, gossip is very contagious viruses. As part of Spiritist movement, we have to be aware of the reminded and be reminded as we do not our Monday sessions, as we do, on our Monday sessions, to be aware of these tricky situations and avoid fruitless conversations. True, yes. If it's not of a good content, guess what? Just don't say it. And if you thought, because we already thought about it, right? We already have the negative inside of us. Transition into something or change with something positive. And promise yourself, let me ask God to, help you catch yourself before it happens again, right? This is very hard because if you turn on the TV, if you turn on the radio, if you listen to music nowadays, I've been assessing this quite a bit lately. It's 99% is negative. So we really have to make better choices of the things that are around us, right? Clutter at home, like, too many things that we don't use. Guess what? It's of no use. Don't have it, So I say this because sometimes the physical also helps us change a little bit what's inside of us as well. Alba says, I was under the impression that humanity has evolved morally speaking since remote times, i.e. Roman Empire. However, it seems that we are worse, trying to understand under the law of progress. It depends on the type of progress that you refer to. I hate to, I shouldn't even say the word hate. I dislike the idea that we are worse off, right? Because we have seen so many different things in life. I mean, when we take it, ourselves, since you use the Roman Empire as an example, we have done wonders since then. If we go back and just say, 5 years ago, we have so much technology, so many things has happened, so many hard work has been done for us to continue here on Earth, in both realms of life. I beg to differ that we are not uh, in a better place than we were before. So we have to truly analyze this idea. Now, in terms of morality, I would like to say that we could be better off, right? We could be at a better state than we are right now. In that sense, I agree with anybody, because it's not of an idea of being pessimistic, but it, as I was commenting towards the question that Paula posed, we shouldn't be suffering more than we have to. When I say this, is because yes, we have responsibilities that we have to attend from what we have done in the past. But what happens is we make it worse now that we have this opportunity to um, do the right things again, right, or redo the right thing, and we waste with more mundane things. So in other words, instead of being a completer, instead of going back to the spiritual life, completing something, we go back with more debt, because we come with an idea of make amendments with the things that we have done wrong in the past, and we go back with more debts, more wrongdoings than we came back before. So morally speaking, yeah, we can be better off. But I am 100%, 120%, to say that we have done wonders, and with that alone, it encourages us to say, you know what, I am Leo thus far. I can be a better Leo tomorrow. I can help Alba. I can help Daniel. I can help Paula. I can help those by spreading this message. I can help um, other individuals by being a good citizen, by saying hello to someone, right? By buying from the local market, right, to help those who have a job there. And I mean, trying to englobe all the different things that are positive that sometimes we take for granted. I can appreciate life in a different sense. All of these things, I think it's important for us to exemplify. And why not why not use the word, the word that was used by Manuel P, no, Evandro, I'm sorry, materialize life in our lives, right? I know this is kind of a weird way to say materialize life, all the good things that we have around us. So with that, guys, I thank you so much for all your time, connecting with this message. Please read the book. Let us finalize with our closing prayer, and I hope that we can all put this into perspective, actually exercise as well in our lives. So thank you so much. At this point, we would like to thank our dear Creator for this amazing moment that we had, for the opportunity to speak, to be listened, and for all of us to connect with all these different minds that we learn from today, the different spirits that are working hard to bring us joy, encouragement, enlightenment. We also pray for this amazing mind, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, heart, Divaldo Franco, who worked hard to be able to receive this message, this enlightenment to all of us. And here we are today, studying, connecting, questioning, and giving us a different perspective about life. Not only this reincarnation, but also future ones. This way, we would like to ask that each one of us connected here and perhaps in the future, those who will be watching us in different streams, both realms of life, can practice these teachings and feel the joy of our Master Jesus in our heart. We thank you, and so be it. Until next time, dear friends, see you then.